Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Frank DePaola, CISO at Enpro. Frank, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
It's glad to have you. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where CyberLink's intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 Security Operations Center, we use a combination of AI and cybersecurity technicians to see when a hacker successfully bypassed your security. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Frank, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Enpro and your role there as CISO?
Sure. So I work for a global manufacturing company called Enpro, headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. Enpro is a global hybrid company, part holding, part operating company, and our portfolio consists largely of industrial technology companies supporting many different industries from aerospace and defense, semiconductor, food and pharma, automotive, and the list keeps growing. We grow inorganically through mergers and acquisitions. So on average, I'd say we're acquiring a couple companies a year, and that type of work keeps my team pretty occupied, let's say. I've been with Enpro for about 7 years. My role has expanded a little bit. I was hired to be its first CISO, but as they say, no good deed goes unpunished. So during my time here, I've also expanded my role to where I'm now responsible for global infrastructure as well as global IT operations for all of our subsidiaries.
Wow. Okay, so 2 acquisitions a year. I mean, as well, not just CISO, but now in charge of IT and infrastructure as well. How do you sleep at night? I mean, that is a lot. That is a lot of hats and a lot of work. Yeah, how do you do it?
Well, I think it's good to have a good playbook, right? So I would be lying if I said the first acquisition that we made that we didn't fumble our way through it, right? And a lot of lessons learned, a lot of mistakes. Thankfully, none of them, extremely jeopardizing in the grand scheme of things. But when we learn, we kind of have a continuous improvement mindset at Enpro, and that's me personally. That's how I lead my teams. So as we're working through something, we try to be as rehearsed and planned as we possibly can be. We try to leverage and learn from others' mistakes that have paved this path before us. So a lot of research and building playbooks and following those playbooks and continuously improving those playbooks with each acquisition and integration is really the only way, in my opinion, to find consistent success.
I love that. Now, can you share some of your playbook with us? Because I think for most people, in acquisition is what most people will go through, on the occasional acquisition. And it is a nightmare for most people. It's a lot. It consumes their year. It's a big to do. It's difficult. I think as a professional, acquirer, if you will, I mean, who's just constantly going through it. You've got this down to a science. I think there's just an absolute ton that we could all learn from you. Can you share some of your playbook with us?
Sure. So I'd say the first thing that I'd want to set is a little bit of context. And when we talk about integration, we buy other manufacturing companies, right? So when you think about a target manufacturing company, they tend to have their own, information technology. They probably have, a suite of operational technology assets, and then they probably have several business apps like ERPs, CRMs, other types of manufacturing platforms. And when when I first joined Enpro and was thrust into this environment, I learned that we didn't have a consistent process. Sometimes we would acquire a company and treat them as a standalone. Sometimes we would acquire them and maybe integrate bits and pieces. And at the end of the day, as the CISO, I was responsible for securing them all. regardless of the state of integration, which didn't make me sleep very well at night. And so along the way, I'm a firm believer in the benefits of integration, but also knowing the challenges with integrating all of those items that I just mentioned, right? So I also wanted to be in control of the things that we chose to integrate. So I created a methodology that I believe in the power of marketing as a CISO. Sometimes it's not just knowing how to secure things; it's how to sell and market your strategy. And so knowing that our business didn't necessarily have a complete appetite to integrate every acquisition, and knowing what the challenges that presented for me and my team to secure all the things. I created a presentation, if you will, of a integration framework, and I focused the integration framework on three key objectives. And I'm a firm believer, like if you read the Simon Sinek book, start with why. Like I believe sometimes to sell effectively, you have to start with the why.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to focus on the objectives, and those three objectives were what I call the three C's: cybersecurity, compliance, and collaboration. And so what's encompassed in those three C's for us is obviously cybersecurity. So getting our identity systems integrated so that we have one common identity store, getting all of our identity policies consistent, ensuring that we have a multi-factor authentication deployed to MFA protect all of the critical data or line of system application access. Security stack on the endpoint, right? So having EDR, having vulnerability management agents deployed for continuous vulnerability scanning. These types of things, were part of that cybersecurity capability. Also, if they're cloud, incorporating their environment and either extending our cloud footprint to engulf theirs or migrating all of their cloud resource into our environment. Was critical. So that's kind of that cybersecurity thing, the cybersecurity bucket that we would look to achieve. A lot of these cybersecurity capabilities we would do actually before we completed the integration, and that give us a sense of, right, we don't want to integrate a breached organization, right? So that's an important factor. So getting some visibility and having a peace of mind to know that the organization is relatively clean is important. So you achieve the cybersecurity bucket. Then the other one is compliance. And so a lot of regulatory compliance frameworks are dependent on sound and mature cybersecurity controls being in place, right? Being able to meet the objectives of the NIST CSFs or ISO 27001, or if you're DFARS or CMMC, whatever that framework that applies to your organization looks like, being able to meet that regulatory compliance framework and having some tools to manage and measure effectiveness of that program. And so we have built that framework for ourselves, and we're able to kind of integrate and tie in the organization and their control framework because we've consistently deployed all of our tools to their environment. So that allows us to meet the compliance aspect of it. And then the third is collaboration. And a key part of our ability to collaborate is to be on a common email platform, be on a common chat platform. And so, whether it's Microsoft 365 or G Suite, integrating all of your businesses on a common platform is critically important, and it removes a lot of barriers. And so that's another one of our key objectives in our playbook is to migrate the target acquisition into our collaboration platform. So that's part of it. Created that presentation, presented it to our corp development team, and they agreed to allow us to try it out on the next acquisition. And so we tried it out. We were able to time box the acquisition timeframe. And that was critically important because we were able to set expectations when a lot of these things were able to be achieved. So collaboration being a key component of M&A, and also now the risk of not having effective cybersecurity controls. So we were able to talk through that. Cyber insurance now becomes a lot more manageable for the target acquisition because we can, with high confidence, share the maturity of their program because it's our program. And it just allowed us to really be able to speak to our process with a higher degree of confidence. We integrated that acquisition, and then soon thereafter we acquired another company. We integrated that company, which was much larger, and over time built trust from the rest of the functions of our business, namely the legal and the corp development team. And then we had some past acquisitions that we chose not to integrate at the time. And we did such a good job on these current M&A deals that we got approval to integrate all of our past acquisitions. So I'm very proud to say today all of our entities are integrated.
Wow. That's spectacular. So how do you manage, so many different compliance frameworks like, the ISO, CMMC, NIST, DFARS? How do you, I mean, that's even, just one, just trying to keep up with CMMC or your ISO, it's a full-time, it can be a full-time job. It's a lot, right? So now you're doing this. I'm assuming you've got different, manufacturers in different industries with different compliance, and now you're having to manage all of that. Have you created a framework that kind of applies to all of them to where you're like, yeah, ours works for, NIST, DFARS, CMMC for the most part, and then you just tweak a little bit, or how did you work that out?
Yeah, that's exactly the way with so many, I believe that there's, the majority of the frameworks have a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
And so generally, if you have if you're implementing a security program and you've got, sound security controls and you're adopting best practices, you're looking at, the CIS top 18 or whatever the framework is today, then generally speaking, you're probably doing the right things in the eyes of all the frameworks. But that's what we've done. We've looked at, implementing a strong and relatively mature security program across all, cybersecurity fronts. And then we have a GRC tool that allows us to, define all of our security controls and map those once, but yet it cascades to all of the relative frameworks. And so it's almost like, build it once and apply it across all of the frameworks that we care about.
That's really cool. So what are you using for that?
The GRC tool?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're using Audit Board Cross Comply.
Super cool. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so obviously, as you can't be doing all of this yourself, so you must have a great team. Is there do you have any kind of tips or tricks that you use that for finding those right fit employees?
Yeah, that's a great question. So before I came to Enpro, I worked at GE, and I worked for the appliances business, who was divested in 2016. And one thing I learned is during the announcement of the sale of our business, I was tasked with replicating GE's world-class cybersecurity program that they provided to all of the GE businesses, and I was tasked with replicating that within our business in a 9-month transition period. And so to think about that was mission impossible. And along with that, I had a team of none at the time. So I was given 2 employees, not go out and hire people. It was internal transfers. But I did have a little bit of autonomy to kind of choose, right, the skill sets that I needed to help sort of plant the seeds of building and growing this team. And one thing that I've always been a firm believer in is, when we think about security programs, it's not about going out and buying all the shiny things or looking at where all the buzz is in the industry, but look at maybe the most commonly used platforms that offer the most extensibility. And so in that sense, I'm a little bit of a purist, and I have always beat the drum of Active Directory. A lot of people don't realize that you're using Active Directory at the core of, probably your primary identity store. And there's so much security configuration that you can can achieve using group policy and all of the configurations within it. If you've extended AD up to Azure AD or Entra, I guess we're calling it now, same thing, right? You've got conditional access policies and so much that is inherent in the tools you've already paid for. And so I look for people starting out that had expertise in these areas. So at GE, I brought some people over that helped, kind of get our arms around these areas, and then slowly built the program out and successfully achieved our 9-month exit of the TSA. At Enpro, same thing. When I first joined Enpro, there were no security team members. There wasn't a security program. And so the first employee that I hired was an Active Directory lead. It was an internal transfer. In addition, knowing that needs to be a strong amount of organizational management, I also had a project manager internally transferred to my team, and the three of us really started building out the foundation of our program. And we always, it's kind of the cliche, but taking a risk-based approach. But really, that's what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, when we talk about our roles as CISOs and security practitioners, it's not to secure all the things, right? Even though that's what we want to do. It's really to effectively manage risk to the organization. Sometimes that means not doing anything, right? It all depends. And so what we've done is we took a look at the organization, we assessed risk in all the different areas that our business operates, and we started prioritizing our efforts. Right. Sometimes that was buying tools. Sometimes that was just extending the efficacy or the configuration of existing tools that were already in our tool set. And so, that's kind of how we got started. The other thing is, in terms of building a team, is I'm also not one, my team isn't massive. Enpro's not we're a global company, but I mean, we're probably just shy of 4,000 global employees. And so, I don't have a team of 50 security professionals. And so I also look for people who have a varied skill set, right? Somebody who can't just do one thing, who can kind of be asked to be a jack of all trades, sometimes even a master of none is good enough, right? Because we can train people and invest in people. And maybe that's the last part of how to develop a strong team, is being willing to see where their skill set developmental needs and really getting buy-in and advocating to train, to develop, to make sure that, when budgets get tight, make sure, training is not always the first thing that has to completely go. I mean, relative to the situation.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think in far too many organizations, people are seen as a human resource to be used, versus a human asset to be developed, and that as you do that, you're building value, for the organization. That kind of Swiss Army knife person who now that they are really good at all of those things, or that Swiss Army knife blade becomes super sharp and can cut faster and better. So now they're a better jack of many trades. So no, I think that you're spot on there. And I think in today's environment, it's far too easy to lose sight of that. Especially when there's pressure to do more with less. That's always happening. And especially, I think, as AI comes in, that I think, interestingly enough, I think that pressure is about to get a lot more. I think it's going to go up significantly, because it's now with AI, why can't we do more? Why can't we replace several of these people, with AI? Why aren't we leveraging AI more? And in some cases, that's true. I mean, we had the CIO of a small software, company. They were Web 3.0 company. They had 77-ish developers. And then they started using AI, and now they're down to 7, and they're far more productive at the 7, person, level with AI than they were at 77. Great use of AI. That makes perfect sense. And I think that that it really just supercharges every developer now. I don't think it's one of these things where we need to run and be like, oh no, there's no need for developers anymore. Like, I think, then people often mistake what, like Mark Zuckerberg saying they're going to get rid of, and they may get rid of tons of their entry level, programmers. And that'll be a problem for them later that they'll buy their way out of because they have the money, but they're going to end up having this major gap, and they're going to have to use tons of money to kind of fill those gaps and put those people in later, because as those older ones age out, now what do you have? You haven't built up those entry level people who are going to stick around, and you're kind of known as a company that will discard people. All right, but you're going to offer them millions of dollars a year to come work for you because you use them like cheap resources. But I think when you go back to the kind of, I don't want to say real companies, but real companies, right? That are, smaller, care more about people. I think what you said about developing people is just so important these days. I mean, it's so let me ask you, what are some of the ways that you do that? I mean, and do you see that playing out in employee retention? Are your people sticking around now because you're investing in growing them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And also, one thing that I didn't share is that I spent the first 10 years of my working career in the U.S. Army, and so I'll say that I learned. Thank you for your service.
Ditto. Yeah, but literally 10, which is weird because you don't find many guys like us who are 10 years.
Well, hey, it's make or break, right? We either stay 20,
That's right.
we get out, right? It's
Yeah.
but no, I always attribute, I think, every one of like the leadership skills that I bring forth and how I lead and how I show up to skills that I learned very early on in my Army career, right? I know that if you go and you talk to, Army brass, they'll tell you mission first. And you know what? I mean, that was what we were always taught, but you can't accomplish the mission if your team isn't willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish the mission. And those type of people are not going to follow ineffective, risky, or just untrustworthy leaders. And so, and how I show up is really kind of leaning into strong leadership skills. So, extreme ownership there's a great book by Leif Babin and Jocko Willink called Extreme Ownership. Highly recommend it. But a lot of the characteristics that they talk about in that book, I mean, are so spot on. It's just, knowing what you're responsible for, and above all else, just being accountable for leading it and driving it. In addition, having your teams back, going to bat for them, fighting for the training budgets, fighting for increase in salary or whatever that looks like for them. Gain trust with your team. I think these things are part of culture building, and also celebrations. Like I had an internal not debate, but a conversation with some of my peers within my organization, and we were talking about the act of celebrating wins, like people getting certifications as an example. I'm a firm believer that I will scream from the mountaintops every time one person achieves something, a certification, graduates, anything like that. And if you do that over and over, and you have create a culture of celebrating these types of things, it creates a more of a family dynamic than just this is just where I go to work. So I think these are part of the culture building things that, in my opinion, really lead to employees that would do more for their leaders, that will do more for the organization. If the organization in turn invests in their personal development, I think it creates a sense of ownership, right? I own my role rather than my role is just some place where I earn a paycheck. And so I think these are some of the things that are really important. And in some cases, I've talked to some leaders and some CISOs, and they don't place the same amount of value in these aspects, but I think they're critically important, especially in a more competitive industry or in time in society as we are today.
Couldn't agree more. I think that far too often you get leaders who see them as resources that it should only be there for a couple of years. Then they come in and they go out, and they're just homogenous widgets in the machine. I mean, is it wrong? I mean, having been in the army where everybody, the whole idea is that everybody is a replaceable cog. I get it. That makes sense. No one person should be able to stop the whole show. Makes perfect sense. But at the same time, there is something to be said for, you know, treating a human, like they're important because when they come to work, you want them to bring their best self there. And if they're showing up just to exchange time for money, and they're going to do the least possible amount, then you're going to get the very least out of them. And I think that when you invest in them and you create a healthy, enjoyable, exciting environment, you're just going to do better. I mean, you think about it. Anybody who's ever been great at anything, they loved it. They love what they do. And if you don't have people who are coming to work loving it, you're not going to get that top tier performance out of them. You're going to get something else. And why?
And one more thing that I'll add, and this is probably going to be a controversial statement to make in
Do
this
it.
time in society, but diverse teams win. You know, focusing on, a bunch of people that look like me, that sound like me, is not going to lead to as an effective team dynamic. So I lead with diversity. I'm a firm believer that, diverse teams win. There's studies that have demonstrated it. It's measurable. And so I don't think that I would want to discount the fact that I'm a firm believer in that.
I think the Army really helped with that, because from day one, it's a diverse group, and they kind of that is what it's had to be for so long, right? And the Army was really good at kind of leading that charge. Maybe they're not so much anymore, or they could be a little more than, but I think historically, the Army took a really good position to say, we're going to be, we're going to be inclusive and a diverse, fighting force. And I think that paid dividends for a very long time. And I think it was just really natural for me, and I'm assuming that, for you as well, that you saw the benefit of that. You could see that having this diverse background of people who see things differently, who think differently, great. Now you're getting better perspectives. You are a more dynamic team than if you just all have the same one, kind of vision and mind.
Right.
Doesn't really help. So no, I couldn't agree more. Well, let me ask you. So can you walk us through your background? Because I think a lot of people you've told us a little bit, and I think we're piecing it together. But I love how I don't think we've had two guests on with the same kind of background. So I'd love to hear your story. How did you get it? How did you get into IT and kind of your rise to the top? How did it go?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so I out of high school, probably like many people, I didn't have parents that were in a position to pay for college. I firmly believe that college was a path to a better, less stressful life. And I saw the military as potentially an avenue to take where I could learn a viable skill that's marketable in the civilian world, gain some experience and maybe some education, get out, and then apply the learning. So I talked to my recruiter, maybe like you, probably like a lot of people, and I said, I want to work in computers or healthcare because I thought those were the two industries that were future proof. And my recruiter sold me on a job that he said was computers, which that's debatable, but it was voice and data communications. And so I did that for a while. When I joined the military back in 1998, it was very much military standard equipment. We didn't use commercial equipment in our networking and infrastructure. So not really marketable on the outside. But thankfully, somewhere along the way, the military wisened up and we started using commercial equipment. And what that meant for me was I started getting trained on Cisco devices, ATM, firewalls, routers, switches, all this networking gear that became more and more transferable on the civilian world. So I stayed in the Army a lot longer than I had originally planned because I also started getting my bachelor's degree. I wanted to get a degree before I got out, which is, put me about 9 years. So I got my degree, got a couple networking certifications, and put threw caution to the wind and left the Army for a role as a systems engineer for a regional consulting company in central Kentucky. And I worked there for a few years. They primarily Microsoft technologies. I did a lot of Exchange email migrations, Active Directory, as I mentioned. That's where my passion for the value of AD really was created. And this organization also did a fair amount of security work, so I got some security exposure. Worked there for a few years, and then I didn't want to do the consulting thing anymore. I wanted a desk to put my family's pictures and my kids' pictures on. So I went to work for a large restaurant franchise organization, and and I was a senior systems engineer. About maybe 3 or 4 months before I joined, they had a data breach. I guess a manager this was before the prevalence of Wi-Fi in all the restaurants. Wi-Fi was a no-no at this time, and some manager brought his Linksys router from home, plugged it into the restaurant switch so he could use his laptop wirelessly. And unfortunately, the organization was breached, and that really was sort of the first responsibilities that I had for security and compliance. And so I was tasked with building a PCI compliance program and a security program, and it kind of ignited the passion around cybersecurity for me. I did it for about 5 years before that company was acquired, and decided, look, I don't want to do infrastructure and security. I just want to do security. And so I went to work for Humana as a security architect for a short stint. And then that kind of parlayed my opportunity with GE, which working for an organization like GE really was a career builder for me. And I owe, I think, a lot of my success, especially the learnings in my current role, to the experience I gained at GE.
And then from GE to here.
And from GE to Enpro, and I've been here for about 7 years.
That's fantastic. It's funny. We had a very similar Army experience, except for me it was funny. I wanted to be an airborne ranger. I don't even know why. I was reading these books. I knew my parents didn't have the money for college, and for whatever reason, before the dawn of the internet, you knew about what you knew. Your knowledge of the world and the way it worked depended on who you talked to, right? And you just, nowadays it's like, oh, obviously you just Google that shit and you find out how you're gonna get to college if your parents don't have money. Like, here are 12 ways to go to Harvard, with no money. Oh, great. But back then it was like, I don't know, dummy, figure it out, right? So you did. And so so the Army was my way. So I was reading these books about Rangers in Vietnam, and I was like, that's awesome, these airborne Rangers. And so I go to the recruiter and I was like, I want to be an airborne Ranger. And take the ASVAB test, and then they give me this DLAB, this defense language aptitude battery test, and they're like, yeah, you're not going to be an airborne Ranger. I'm like, the hell, I'm not. I'm here like all the jobs for the enlisted guys open up July 1st for the whole year. So I'm like, I'm here July 1st. I know I've done this much research with recruiters. I know all the jobs are here today. So I want airborne Ranger. They're like, yeah, no, you can't get airborne. We can put anybody into an airborne Ranger slot, but you got to be an intel guy. I was like, I'm like, so we argue about this all night, like all day. And we ended up I got nowhere. So I had to come. They put me up at we were at the Pittsburgh MEP station. We had to drive like an hour to get to it. So we stayed the night. My recruiter's like, what the hell's going on in there? So we stayed the night, and we go back in the next day. Same thing. And eventually they like, look, these are your options. You can be an airborne interrogator. And I was like, okay, or you can be an airborne artillery. And I was like, we watched this horrible video about what an interrogator was, and anyway, I ended up going the interrogator route, and they taught me Spanish and Mandarin Chinese, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was a really cool time, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a great way, and the Army was fantastic for me. It's how I got to college, through they had this partnership with the University of Maryland. So when I finally got to a place where I could take classes, because my first assignment was in the 82nd Airborne Division, and you had to re-enlist to get like one semester. If you re-enlist for like 3 years, you get one semester of college at like the local community college. I'm like, that's not a great deal, guys. Like 3 years for one semester. But then I went to Camp Zama, Japan, and there it was finally this strategic intel place. So I had 3 years to knock out my college, and that's what I did. And so, yeah, the Army was great. And it was just such a great way to kind of get into things. I can't say enough great things about it. Not for everybody, but boy, in terms of leadership, I think getting to see all kinds of good and bad leadership just kind of very quickly, helps you develop your style very quickly, which I think is people miss in the civilian world. It's hard to do that in the civilian world because you're not going to change leadership. You're not going to see that many different leaders as you go. That takes years and years and years. But in the military, you're going to see it a lot faster because people are funneled out every few years. So you get new leadership. You see new leadership styles. You move up. You're a leader now. And so I think that's one of those things that I think is a real benefit and has really benefited, me. So I'm curious, did you see the same kind of thing for you, going from the Army into the civilian world?
I did. It's funny you mentioned about, like the nuance between leadership in the civilian world and how civilians are exposed versus military. And it made me think like, in a platoon or even in a company environment, you're probably directly not only coming in contact, but directly impacted in some way, shape, or form with probably at least 20 different leaders, right? From squad leaders to platoon sergeants to XOs to platoon leaders, and directly impacted. Like they can influence your day. They can create good days, or they can definitely create some bad days.
Well said.
And when I think about the civilian world, yeah, we like if I think about a typical day at work, I come in contact with some leaders of people, but they may not, I may not get a true sense of their leadership style because I'm not directly working with them. I'm not impacted by the decisions they make necessarily. And so I think that, you're spot on about really learning about what good leadership. So for me, I learned what good leadership looked like very early on. And thankfully, my first team chief, first sergeant, was a great leader. Unfortunately, I had him for 2 months, and then he got out of the Army. But he said something to me that always sticks with me even to this day. He said, no matter what you're doing, even the most minuscule of things, do it like someone's always watching you. Do it to the best of your ability. He said, even if you're scrubbing toilets in the latrine, like do it like your first sergeant is watching you. And that really stuck with me. So it didn't matter if it was a small task or something large that had, wide, broad visibility. Personally, I've always tried to do things to the best of my ability with that mindset that somebody could always be watching. And also I try to really ingrain that in the people that I lead is, anything that's worth doing is worth doing to 100% of your capabilities. Because you really don't know who's watching and how the effort that you put into something today could reap, significant rewards down the road. And so along with that, I also think that, the one thing that I guess if I can take a slightly different spin is, when leaders think about building strong teams, they think about how can we invest in our subordinates, right? How can we bring that group up and make them better and continuously improve their skill sets and how they show up. But the one thing that we often sacrifice is our own development. And thankfully, that's one thing I'm really passionate about with my own people leaders is, look, I already know it. It's non-negotiable. You're going to invest in your team, but by damn it, you better make some damn time for yourself too. I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to invest in me. I expect the company to invest in me. Like in order for people to continue in their growth journey as leaders, we have to continue our own personal growth journey, and it's critically important. So these are a couple of things that I think are pretty important.
I love that. And I think, that I love how your first sergeant put that, that because you hear that, and I forget who it was, and I've heard it many times. I think Warren Buffett said it, I think it might have even been, Carnegie, but, people say that you should always, when you're making decision, when you're doing stuff, do it thinking that it's going to be on the front page of the Times the next day. Right. So that, okay, And fine, and that's nice, but I think that I like the whole first sergeant's approach better. Do it like somebody's watching you all the time, because then you are going to do your best, right? You are going to take the hard right over the easy wrong. You're going to make the right decision, and you're going to do your very best every time. You're not going to make some poor decision. You're not going to slack off. You'll do your best because you're like, oh, what if somebody's, do it like somebody's watching. I think that's fantastic advice. Frank, this has been fantastic. I love this. I thank you for coming on. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about Enpro?
Yeah, you could visit our website to find out more about Enpro, www.enpro.com. To learn more about me, search Frank DePaola on LinkedIn. I think there may be 2 or 3 of us, but I think I'm the only one in cybersecurity. There may be a dentist out there and maybe a project manager in New York or something if memory serves. But I do quite a bit with the community. I'm pretty active with the Cloud Security Alliance. I'm part of their Zero Trust Working Group leadership team, so I lead a couple work streams building governance and strategy around Zero Trust. I do a lot in the Charlotte community as well, so I'm on the board with Cloud Security Alliance. So look me up on LinkedIn, and that would probably be the best way to get in touch with me.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks again for coming on, Frank. This was an absolute blast.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.